A massive snow wall has become quite the tourist attraction in Japan. According to Japanese broadcaster NHK, the town of Sakayu saw a record snowfall of more than 18.5 feet this winter. So to get through the white stuff, they built a snow route with walls towering nearly 30 feet high.
Worth of rain fell in just a few hours. Nearly 16 centimetres of water pelted the city, a record amount and equal to the normal rainfall for April. Police were forced out of their patrol cars and into boats to reach those stranded by the deluge. People were urged to stay indoors to keep safe, though some homes were no refuge from the rain.
Overall, this wintertime, we lost close to 3,000 beehives.
Commercial beekeeper Larry Pender has 1,800 hives now. He hires them out to pollinate fruits, vegetables, and nuts on 70 farms across the West, like this blueberry farm near LA.
Each hive has somewhere around 30 to 40,000 bees in it.
For the last 8 years, bee populations have been in free fall, but Pender says this year is worse by far.
All of a sudden, we open up the box and there's no bees in that box.
None.
None.
They become disoriented, can't find their way back to their hives, and die in the fields. Nationwide, beekeepers say they've lost on average 40 to 50% of their hives.
7.1 magnitude earthquake has struck Indonesia's Papua region in the eastern part of the country. The US Geological Survey says it struck at a depth of 58 kilometres. No tsunami warning was issued. The quake struck on land at around 1:42 p.m. local time.
Violent clashes in Cairo today. At least one person died and dozens were injured outside the city's main Coptic Christian cathedral. The fighting broke out when mobs attacked a funeral procession for 4 Christians killed by Muslims.
Search for answers this afternoon after a gunman went house to house on a deadly rampage. The carnage unfolded in a small village 30 miles outside of Serbia's capital of Belgrade. Police say a 60-year-old gunman shot most of the victims as they slept. Among the 13 killed, the gunman's mother, son, and a 2-year-old child. The suspect also shot his wife and himself. They both survived, though, with severe injuries. Investigators are now trying to unravel a motive for those killings.
Seems like we say something like this every year, then some years, sadly, it comes true. The annual Atlantic hurricane forecast is out from Colorado State University. It's bad. It calls for 18 tropical storms, 9 full-on hurricanes. Last year's forecast was well below what actually happened, which we all know included Hurricane Sandy in October. It killed dozens of people, caused billions in damage, and ripped up the coastline, which remains crippled in parts to this day. Now we turn to the weather tonight after what felt like a midsummer day in parts of the east, like 82 degrees in New York, and what is looking like several days of dangerous violent storms across a huge area of our country. Warm air moving up from the south across Texas is slamming into very cold air, dipping down in the middle of the country. That's a dangerous setup. Weather Channel meteorologist Mike Seidel has our report from Aurora, Colorado.
It may be spring, but winter's putting up one last fight. A big storm is moving across the U.S. and with it, extreme weather. On one side of the system, it's cold, snowy, and windy. In Denver, hundreds of flights were canceled because of icy runways and wind gusts of nearly 50 miles an hour. Schools and businesses shut down because of the snow and bone-chilling cold. Temperatures at 40 degrees below average with wind chills below zero, rare for April. The storm could dump up to 20 inches of snow in some areas. Meanwhile, because of warm air ahead of the front, parts of the plains and Midwest are bracing for dangerous thunderstorms and tornadoes. Hail came crashing down in Kansas. The Weather Channel's Mike Bettis is there.
Ping pong ball size hail that pelted the crew. When that hits you, trust me, it hurts.
To give you a sense of the extremes, earlier today in Kansas, it was 17 degrees on one side of the state, while the mercury hit 74 on the other. A microcosm of the weather across the country. Snow, flash floods, and sleet in the west, and record highs on the East Coast, where 80-plus degree temperatures are nearly 40 degrees warmer than what parts of the Northeast saw just a week ago. And closer to the capital, what a difference 5 days makes.
Uma cratera com 100 metros de profundidade e mais de 17 metros de diâmetro. Foi este o cenário encontrado no meio de uns terrenos agrícolas na aldeia de Porto da Espada, em Marvão. Grande e misterioso buraco que levou até outra dimensão.
North Korea's response to the call for diplomacy has been blustery at best. It demands the world recognize its nuclear and ballistic missile programs as its sovereign right in exchange for even sitting down to talk.
Kim Jong-un probably feeling very insecure and very unstable, and that the more unstable and more insecure it feels, the more the need to hold on to, cling on to this ultimate weapon of destruction, nuclear weapons, because this is the only thing that could ensure the continuation of the Kim dynasty.
The West hopes Kim Jong-un's weeks-long propaganda outburst will cause China to make a fundamental shift in its support for Pyongyang.
Of the aftermath of this past storm season, you could hear people asking, what's next? Pestilence? Locusts? Well, close. How about cicadas? As you may know, they hibernate underground and they only come out every 17 years, and that would be right now, just when we thought nature had nothing left to throw at us. Our report tonight from our Chief Environmental Affairs correspondent, Ann Thompson.
The signs of spring are popping up everywhere. But this season's real blockbuster is a sequel. Cicadas, the return of Brood 2. After a 17-year absence, this noisy group is coming back in force, says University of Connecticut researcher Dr. John Cooley.
The usual figure that we like to quote is several million per acre.
Per acre?
Per acre.
So we're talking billions and billions.
Yes, billions and billions. It's a lot of cicadas.
These 17-year cicadas will infest the East Coast, from North Carolina to New York's Hudson Valley and Connecticut.
A sinkhole swallows a number of homes in Russia. The houses all fell into this 45-foot deep sinkhole in a little town in central Russia. One resident said he heard a rumbling noise and then saw a tree outside his window just disappear.
They came in, all of this came in about 10 minutes.
It was the first time David Beck saw the ice shove ashore.
Crunching, growling, it also kind of sounds like wind chimes as the ice breaks and comes down. It's the tinkle. It sounds kind of frightening, but cool.
And high winds from the east have sent ice shoves onto Lake Winnebago's western shore.
It all depends what point sticks out farthest, and that's going to get the most damage. And it can wreck, boathouses and everything. It's getting close to some houses now.
Those who make their living on this lake say the ice shove season has come quickly. We might not be done with these giant blocks yet.
It's getting a honeycomb, and it's gonna push. And I know there's probably some 40-foot high ice shoves already.
Meanwhile, people continue to monitor the slow-moving giants and hope the damage is minimal.
Some trees have been damaged, but that's about it for us. I think our neighbors had part of their boat ramp destroyed.
You can't even believe the power of this ice. I mean, if you see what a block of ice weighs, 10 pounds, and and this lake is the wind's just pushing around like toothpicks.
I like it. I just hope it stays that right there, not gets too close.
acolo. Vezi acolo sus? Ce dracu era? Avea bola, ce ăsta? Dar vezi? Ce acolo, balon? Ce dracu e ăla? Cam e capul meu. Ăla zboară acolo sus, așa-i? Vin, mă! Uite!
The American people will say a prayer for Boston tonight, and Michelle and I send our deepest thoughts and prayers to the families of the victims in the wake of this senseless loss.
We've told you how the attack in Boston came with no warning. There were thousands of spectators near the marathon finish line. Suddenly, a single sound stopped the cheering.
I was terrified. Nobody knew where it came from. Nobody knew what it was. We just knew it was a destructive device.
Something just blew up and... Run! Go!
Just make your way over there. All units, stay off the air and make your way over there.
Oh my God.
The National Disaster Management Agency here in Pakistan has now, just in the last few minutes, released concrete figures. They've been working hard through the night to get those details. They say now 35 people dead, 150 people injured. They say between 150 and 200 homes in this remote area of Baluchistan, the west of Baluchistan, close to the Iranian border. And they say the reason that there were so many houses destroyed because in that area, a lot of the houses are very simple houses, mud-built houses. The army also been working...
1,000 homes have either been completely destroyed or damaged and rendering them uninhabitable. We've met people here who are living in...
Chinese authorities closing down poultry markets in Shanghai and slaughtering birds because of growing concerns over H7N9, also known as bird flu. Scientists say this strain had not appeared in humans until now. It's left 6 people dead in eastern China.
Well, what's different about it is the fact that it's a new strain in terms of infecting people. Also, it's a very severe strain, more severe than some other strains of bird flu. It's a very severe respiratory illness. The people have died quite quickly who have contracted this. Again, no evidence that people can transmit this to each other.
Until the weekend, the outbreak seemed confined to Shanghai and other eastern areas, where authorities closed live poultry markets and slaughtered birds in an effort to contain it. But now it's spread to central and northern China, 63 cases in total, with 14 deaths since March.
Hundreds poured into Parliament's public gallery to hear the debate over a bill that stirred controversy in New Zealand. It's opposed by the Roman Catholic Church and some other conservative religious, political and social groups. But while the bill was introduced by a Labour MP, support for it came from both sides of the political divide. The final tally of votes.
Ayes are 77, the noes are 44.
The vote makes New Zealand the first country in Asia Pacific to legalise same-sex marriage and the 13th in the world.
In France, 4 people have been arrested after a protest against new same-sex marriage proposals turned violent. Several people were hurt.
France has become the 14th country in the world to legalise same-sex marriage.
Swiss television reported on the controversial vote in the lower house of parliament on the 23rd of April. Claude Berthelon of the ruling Socialist Party presiding. Eject those hecklers. Just minutes before the voting, anti-gay marriage campaigners made their last stand in the gallery of the assembly and were thrown out. Enemies of democracy have no place in this chamber. With a socialist majority, the law was definitively passed. 331 in favor, 225 against.
The first of its kind this spring in China as a cold wave hits the northwest and brings a sandstorm that shrouded many parts of the area. The sky turned yellowish red and vehicles turned on emergency lights, while pedestrians covered their mouths and noses with scarves while they trudged against the strong winds. The sandstorm reduced visibility to less than 100 feet. Some unexpected weather blankets China. It's where a cold front brought snow to parts in the north. The winter weather is rare this time of year. In some areas, flowering trees have already started to bloom. The rain turned to snow, and as you can see, it is coating the trees in cities where temperatures have recently soared to over 80 degrees. Floodwaters threaten homes in western Estonia. An icy river overtopped a dam there yesterday. According to local media, 5 people and their pets were helped to safety, and no injuries have been reported so far. Meanwhile, in eastern Poland, more than 100 farms are underwater due to flooding. The flooding on the Bug River is being blamed on a sudden thaw. According to Polish TV, the river hits its highest level since the 60s. Deadly flooding is causing some massive damage to crops in Kenya. The unusually heavy annual rains are wiping out farms and destroying crops across the country. Local media reports that at least 63 people have been killed and over 34,000 displaced by the floods. Heavy rains have been pounding various parts of Kenya, causing flash floods and landslides.
As many as 100 people have been killed after a 6.6 magnitude earthquake struck southwest China. The quake hit Sichuan province at a depth of 12 kilometres and sent panicked residents fleeing into the streets. Thousands of soldiers and emergency workers are heading to the worst hit areas. It's expected the death toll will rise.
This chaotic and frantic search for life has been continuing for hours now in areas across this vast province. Sometimes it ends with remarkable success. A baby here, no more than a few months old, and mother too, are pulled out.
Severe thunderstorm warnings with heavy rain and possible tornadoes. That's what could be in store across the North Island tonight. This includes areas already cleaning up after being battered by wild weather. In Raglan, a small twister tore roofs off houses, while downpours wreaked havoc in Bay of Plenty, flooding homes, stranding motorists and causing landslips.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for being here. On April 22nd, After an extensive and complex criminal investigation named Project Smooth, the RCMP arrested and charged 2 individuals for terrorism-related offenses under various sections of the criminal code. The RCMP is alleging that Shehab Ezzaghayer and Raid Jasser were conspiring to carry out an al-Qaeda-supported attack against a Via passenger train. Had this plot been carried out, it would have resulted in innocent people being killed or seriously injured.
Concert-goers in Argentina over the weekend would have been forgiven for thinking it was part of a pyrotechnic show. There it was, until they realized it was not. In the distance, starting out as a bright streak before lighting up the sky, a brilliant meteor exploding over the Earth. Astronomers are guessing it was about 1.5 feet wide, traveling 81,000 miles an hour. A lot of this kind of thing going on lately.
Flames tear through the Chilean city of Valparaiso, where firefighters have been battling large forest fires that have destroyed at least 60 homes and burned through nearly 150 acres of grasslands. Footage from the city showed large fires burning in residential areas, with distraught residents evacuating their homes and salvaging what they could.
Contain flooded rivers. It's into its 7th consecutive day now.
Good evening, Brian. The wait has begun here tonight. The wait for the Illinois River to start dropping from its record levels, the highest in 70 years.
Austerity deepening among Europeans, with Spain's unemployment jumping to a record 27.2%. In neighboring Portugal, almost 1 in 5 in the workplace doesn't have a job. People in 2 heavily indebted nations launching fresh protests against their governments and international lenders. Let's get the latest from RT's Peter Oliver, joining us live from Lisbon. So, Peter, give us the background about what's going on here. People taking to the streets there, what are you seeing?
Well, people have come out here as part of the usual 25th of April celebrations to commemorate the anniversary of the revolution that took place here in 1974. This year, however, there's also large protests against financial mistreatment, as they see it, by both their own government and by the 3 main lenders in Europe. It's not so much the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, but the 3 money lenders of Europe that Portuguese people are fearing will bring about ruin. To talk to me a little bit more about just why the Troika are the most hated people in Portugal, I think it would be fair to say. I'm joined by João Camargo, who's a anti-Troika activist. Why is Troika the dirtiest word in Portugal?
Well, Troika means austerity, and we have been experiencing for more than a year and a half austerity measures, which have, in fact, destroyed every good prospect of a social state, of a welfare state where people have decent jobs, decent living, and now we have over 1.5 million unemployed. Even the debts and deficits which were talked about to call for the Troika, they're worse. So these policies are unequivocally wrong, and the people have recognized it, and they want the Troika to be out.
Now, when you talk about Troika, we're talking about the International Monetary Fund, the European Union and the European Central Bank. Would you like to see, and would your organisation like to see, the Portuguese government do more to stand up to these three?
Well, the Portuguese government unfortunately goes beyond the Troika. They are very enthusiastic, or we would say fanatical, neoliberal economics defenders, and so they intend to go even further. But of course, we want a government which will stand up to the Troika and say, well, we may have a problem with the debt, but it will not cost us our lives and the life of this entire people to pay a debt which basically is unpayable.